Welcome everybody to another episode of Drink While You Think. I'm Kenji.
I'm Matthew.
We got Graham here. We got Janet here. We're doing a little bit of an internal team Drink While You Think with some of our CFOs. Before we introduce, well, actually, we'll let them introduce themselves. Graham, give us the quick and dirty on Graham Wood.
Graham Wood's been with Acuity now for a little over 10 years. Yeah, I know. I'm still waiting on that gold watch, by the way.
It was his first job.
No, I doubt it. But I've been in the Atlanta area since probably before anybody on this call was practically born. But generally in high tech, healthcare, security, and so forth. Been the CFO for several venture-backed companies. Sold a couple, closed a couple, and have been able to get funding for generally the rest of them, which is a good thing. And then coming to Acuity, it's been a whirlwind of 10 years.
That's for sure.
Especially the last 2 weeks.
Oh yeah, that's what we're gonna here to talk about.
There you go.
What do you what usually, Graham, you're our chief expert on bourbon. What are you drinking today?
What am I drinking today? Not bourbon.
Yeah. Okay.
I have got Yuengling.
Well, Yuengling. Oh,
America's oldest brewery.
There you go. I like it. We've not had Yuengling on here yet, have we? I don't think so.
It's not an American company anymore, just so you know.
Very few of them are anymore.
They sold out.
It says. America's oldest brewery. Doesn't it say foreign owned, or it doesn't say American owned?
That's true.
Yeah, they can't say that anymore.
All right, true. Janet, give us a quick rundown on you and then what you're drinking.
Sure. Janet Mulroy. I think I've been with Acuity 4 years. Originally from New Jersey. Worked most of my career in New York and moved to Atlanta close to 15 years ago. I'm kind of a startup junkie and love that almost all of my clients and the people I deal with at Acuity are startups. And I also have a fund client. And so I get to work with all the funds portfolio companies. And so it's doing exactly what I want to be doing. And it's a lot of fun.
Nice.
And you're the recovering banker of the group, right?
Yeah, I've done a little bit of everything. I was in investment banking in doing entrepreneurial real estate deals, and that led into venture, and that led to an experience with. It was my first startup experience, both as an investor and as I was chief operating officer, and it was fun, and I kind of caught the bug from there.
What are you drinking today?
I'm copying Graham. We think alike, Graham and I. I didn't. I was a late invite to this video cast, and so I didn't have time to go out on a fancy beer run to impress everybody. So this is actually from the Mulroy family disaster preparedness canned beer. Yuengling Light.
Yuengling Light, nice.
I'm actually drinking it like a lady out of a glass, but it's a Sam Adams glass.
There you go.
Nice.
I should go get my bourbon.
You know, what are you gonna do? All right, Matthew, what do you have for us today, Matthew? What are you drinking?
I'm feeling low, so I'm drinking the blue.
The blue, Sweetwater blue.
It's kind of crazy. I'm stuck in my house, so I'm a little blue.
Mine is a little blue. Got the classic Dale's Pale Ale.
Oh, Dale's Pale.
Oscar nice. Blues. That's one of the original. I feel like I've had it on here before, but maybe when we haven't been rated. Oscar Blues. They're out of Colorado originally, but now they have one of the places in Asheville. So they have a brewery in Asheville too. They're brewing it there. Great pale ale.
Cheers, everybody.
All right, cheers, everybody. Thanks for coming on.
Cheers.
What? Feels like this is happening more and more these days during this climate. People
justified.
But you guys the reason we are having you guys on is the CFO office hours, and you guys are two of the members of the CFO team. Graham, the team leader. When we launched the CFO office hours, really in earnest over these past few weeks to really remind our clients, like, hey, take advantage of free time with some of our CFOs. We've been actually expanding it a bit and opening it up to some other folks kind of in the startup community and other small businesses who just need help. And we're kind of getting flooded right now. Like, this is the time where suddenly it feels like it's popular to be an accountant or CFO because phones are ringing, emails are blowing up. But what is to kind of go through, like, what, without getting into any names of clients, obviously, what have been some of the things that like have been coming your guys' way? What are some of the type of questions you guys are fielding these days? Feel free, anyone of you jump in.
Ladies
Jan,
first.
Sure. But, what kind of strikes me is that, SBA loans generally, and in this case, they're sort of geared towards small business. Well, a lot of the calls I'm getting are from startups. And so a lot of the rules don't directly apply. And so a lot of the questions are like, do we even, are we even eligible for this? How do you, at a restaurant, for example, you might have stable revenue, stable payroll, month after month, it changes a little. But with a startup may not have had any payroll 12 months ago.
Yeah.
And it might be, going up and down because like anything else, there's a little bit of a learning curve or, just onboarding, and you got to keep the team together. So I guess it's just specific questions like, what am I eligible for? And how do I answer all these questions?
That's a good one, because I think that we're hearing a lot about the SBAs, and because our client base, like we talked about earlier, both you and Graham have a lengthy career in startups, is this weird intersection of startups plus all these new SBA loans going on. So we're seeing that kind of funky intersection. Graham, are those kind of some of the types of questions you're fielding as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. Janet's right. Do I qualify? How much can I get? And the last question and the last question I get is, what are the gotchas?
Yeah.
I mean, what do I have to watch out?
Can this be real?
Can this be real? Can I really get $10,000 basically free from the EIDL side of it? Or do I, what's this bank in 7A? I've never had to deal with that. And they look at the online form and they freak out.
Yeah.
Simply because it asks a lot of detailed questions that generally in a startup, they're just not that detail oriented.
Yeah.
So they're asking us for a lot of help, a lot of advice, and so forth.
Matthew, you posted in our CFO Slack channel only earlier today, I think, some early thoughts, guidelines around this kind of intersection of startups and the loans. What's kind of the 30,000-foot view on that so far?
Well, two main things that came to mind when you were talking. One is just an understanding of the three programs. So there's the EIDL program, which is the emergency program for people that have been highly effective and really have longer term capital needs. So payables that they're not going to be able to pay, things like that. They have this $10,000 grant. The grant was referring to, that's right now, you have to go through the EIDL application process to get the $10,000 grant, even though it's a different application. And then you have this PPP program that the SBA is running through the banks so those two other programs are running directly through the SBA. And the PPP program looks like to be a grant under the guise of a loan that you have to do through a bank that basically is calculated off payroll for the most part. That covers payroll, rent, and utilities, and maybe some contractor payments over the next 2.5 to 3 months, really ending in June 30th, as long as you keep people employed. So one of the first things we were talking about with what was the order, because you can't use your payroll to justify borrowing under both programs, the EIDL and the PPP. So right now, I think most people are thinking if you have payables or big backlog, you go through the EIDL, and everything else like payroll, contractors, rent, you go through the PPP, but you can apply for both. So that's the first question we get. The second question we get right now is from all of our clients that are venture backed. So there's a 20% affiliate rule with all these applications. So if you have a venture backing and the venture capitalist owns more than 20% of your company, they might have to comply with the affiliate rules, which means that you might have to count all of their portfolio companies in the calculation for the 500 employees.
Right.
So a lot of the venture-backed companies are really worried about not being able to apply because of the affiliate rules. And so where our advice to those folks are right now is the regs are still being written, like we still don't even know, and this is mainly for the PPP where I'm talking about here. The regs are still being written, and the California congressmen and lawmakers are really focused on this because they've got Silicon Valley there. So watch, if you're VC backed, watch the California legislature and the California congressmen, California senators, because they're really pushing for clarification for this for the VC backed companies.
So
and just one thing to add on that, it's not just, it could be, not only is it 20% ownership, but it might be, is there someone that can exercise control over you? And that's where it could potentially get a lot of venture-backed startups.
Yeah, so that there's one that you wouldn't even be able to apply. And then the next thing after that is, even if you can apply, your 20% owner has to disclose a lot of information about themselves. So we don't know if venture capitalists, even if they qualify, are going to be willing to give their tax returns to all their portfolio companies and do that kind of stuff and really outline all their affiliates and stuff like that. There's a logistical nightmare coming for the VC-backed companies. But for the people grinding out, the bootstrappers, this is a bootstrapper law for sure.
Yeah, well, okay, so let's go a level deeper on that. It sounds like SBA, these loans are what you guys are fielding most of the questions on.
Right.
What do you, I'm just curious what everybody thinks on this call. Should these startups, I mean, should they fall under the SBA guidelines? I mean, we're kind of dealing with this weird intersection, should they or should they not? But I guess based on the theory of what they're trying to do and save, should we be out there helping startups? Should we say, nope, sorry, you've already got other capital sources, you go tap those? Or is it, nope, these are businesses too, and also have employees and produce value in the economy? I don't know. I'm just curious if you guys have a take either way on whether startups should even be going after these who already have venture funding.
Now you've hit the conundrum. You've got, everybody talks about the VC has just stockpiles of cash,
Right.
waiting to be invested. And now you've got one of their portfolio companies standing here at the government's doorstep wanting a loan. Somehow those two things generally don't equate to each other. So I think that's what you're seeing now is that, and I've heard the same thing about regs being written and things like that, but I've also heard that there's not that much favor yet in Washington to change it and allow those that are VC and PE backed to come in and not have to deal with the 20% issue or anything like that. Yeah. I mean, that's going to be a huge hurdle to get over.
Yeah.
For the VC community more than anything else, because they're just not used to sharing that kind of information and vociferously oppose it generally.
Matthew or what do you, or Janet, feel free, either one of you guys, to jump in on this, but what is your thought about this? Should this SBA program be, should it be allowed for startups to jump on these things, or you think it's getting a little bit out of bounds?
I definitely think it should be allowed for startups. And I understand, especially having a fund client, I understand sort of what the public perception of a venture fund might be, but don't blame the startups for that, or just because a startup was good enough or promising enough to raise seed money or to raise Series A. I'm working with a couple of clients now who just banked their Series A. They're not way up there on the revenue curve yet. I wanted to say they were pre-revenue, but they're just past pre-revenue. So they need whatever cash they raise. There's several month plus runway to their next round.
Yeah. And
if they don't make that, they're out of business. All the people they employ are out of business. And everything just stops. The innovation just stops, and nobody wants that. It's a different type of need than a restaurant or a hotel or any other type of business where the impact is crystal clear. And the programs are kind of designed for those types of small businesses, and they're rightly so. But that I still think there should be something, or at least some part of it, the program that helps startups as well.
Great points. Really good points. Matthew, what are your thoughts?
If I ran the world, thoughts, or should they apply under this program? I guess I've kind of kicked this one around and struggled with what I would have done versus what the lawmakers did. But I've talked to enough people now at high enough levels that we're in these discussions and understand the intent of the law, or are claiming to understand the intent of the law. I don't know anybody that was writing it, but the intent was basically don't fire anybody until June 30th. Every business in the United States. That was the intent of the law. Like, we're going to get you through June 30th. I don't know if they sized this correctly to be able to do that. My gut is then everybody should be able to access this capital. If I was administering the program, I would definitely put people with $1 million of cash in reserves on the balance sheet, regardless if they're venture backed or they're otherwise, to the back of the line, right? But I don't know that that's going to happen with the expedience. I would hope that there was some liquidity consideration, for this, for people that the people in the most need got it. And I'm afraid that the people that are the most on the ball are going to get it. And that's not necessarily the people that are in the most need. So, but if right now we're telling, I think out of all of our clients, we had 437 clients we logged. 6 of them are 501c6s, so they shouldn't apply, but 431 should.
Yeah,
they can. For the PPP program, for the EIDL, I feel like if you feel like if you were really, really impacted by this, like severely, I think you should apply there. But I think everybody should leave that to people who are severely impacted. Personally, I know people are telling people to apply for both. That's the capitalist thing to do. But the EIDL, in my kind of personal opinion, should be reserved for people in like dire need.
Well, you also got to remember that EIDL will be paid back somehow.
That's a 30-year number.
You're going to have personal guarantees on that.
No, I don't know that there's personal guarantees on the EIDL. I can't remember, but that one's the 3.75% loan over 30 years. So that's meant for get you out of the hole and you pay it back over a long period of time.
Yeah. And just to, I'm pretty sure the DL in EIDL is disaster loans. Yep. And so it's this, if a tornado comes through or a hurricane comes through, it's pretty obvious which companies or which businesses are impacted and which aren't. And in a localized area, it's reasonable to assume that everybody's impacted. With the COVID-19, some companies are fine and doing well and operating, maybe even busier than normal.
Yeah.
They're few and far between, but there are all sorts of other types of companies, and you have to, anytime somebody calls or contacts us, you really have to think through their business model to see, well, why is this, impacting you? And it's a chain, so it hurts everybody.
Yeah, I think it's. I really like what you said earlier, Janet. I mean, I think the challenge with this is that we do need startups, especially around things for like innovation, and startups as well are providing jobs and valuable economic impact to different communities, and so we need all those things. The challenge always is when it's tied to venture capital or private equity. And it's, to your point, that's not their fault, right? If these startups could go to a traditional bank and get a loan, they'd go there because rates are much better there. They can't get that. So they don't have the access to capital, in fact, that most traditional businesses do. But I think where it starts getting murky and politicized is where it starts feeling bailoutish, right? Well, wait a minute. Why are private equity and venture capital firms getting these grants or kind of really favorable loans when these are the wealthiest of the wealthy? I think we saw all that backlash, there was the banks, a number of years ago. And, people are starting to rumble a little bit about that around airlines and travel and things. And I don't know if there's a right or wrong with it. It's just a highly politicized and tough environment because people don't feel one way or the other. But, it's interesting. I think we feel like we're caught in the middle of, we're just trying to help small businesses survive, regardless of what flavor you come from. It's like, we want to see these businesses kind of go on. So that certainly has been interesting. But like Matthew said, the real outcome here is let's just try to keep people working, keep businesses moving forward, at least for a period of time. I don't know whether it's going to be long enough or not, but
it's the right goal to keep people working. And so you shouldn't punish people because they have a job with a startup versus a job,
That's exactly right. I think that's the right idea. So we'll wrap us up here with one last question, because it probably have some interesting things to jump in here too. So number one being obviously this SBA, all these loans has got to be what you guys are getting hit with the most. Beyond the loans, what are the typical things, probably what's next on the list of what you're having to kind of help either clients or small businesses through that are calling in to get some of the free office hours? What are you seeing after the loans usually?
I'm generally advising the people to have contingency plans in place. I mean, most of them, I say most, have done a 2020 budget. They've taken a look at it, and I said, okay, now cut it by 25% for revenue, and then do another one that cut it by 50%.
Yeah.
And see what kind of decisions you would have to make to survive. Yeah. Think survival. And whether you ever have to use that plan or not, let's hope not, but at least you've got a path you have thought about and not have to do it in an emergency situation. I got a call this morning, the one I talked to Friday, that basically said, it started already. I've had a customer pull back on me. So I'm glad you told me that last week. We've been thinking about that over the weekend. So they want to talk further. I said, fine. I'm glad you are. It's just one of those things that
I heard.
You don't be caught with your pants down.
Yeah, I heard years ago, Graham. I can't think of the guy's name, but he's the CEO of ICE, Intercontinental Exchange.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Jeff Sprecher.
Yes, Jeff Sprecher. Thank you, Janet. And I heard Jeff talking about this, and he mentioned the first thing he does, and he hasn't taken a new job in a while. I think Jeff's probably still there, but he said that what he would do is he would write his disaster plan. Literally, it was a break glass and emergency plan, and put it somewhere. And you just get it out of the way. I'm like, okay, if this goes to hell in a handbasket, here's the plan. Mm-hmm. He said it used to help him operate. And then like, okay, I know if it gets really bad, I've actually already got the worst case scenario plan I can pull off the shelf and just start executing on. So sounds like you're helping folks who most people probably don't always think that way, like Jeff did. Right. But sounds like that's one area you're helping people through. Graham is thinking about what are the really serious type of steps you might take during this time. Janet, what about you? Are you
honestly, it's everyone I'm talking to, every one of my clients and our portfolio companies are trying to, looking back at their operating expense budgets in particular, because you don't know, in a startup, you expect revenue to ramp up, and you have no control over, who's at the other end of sales calls. You don't know what's impacting their business. And obviously it varies from company to company. And I've been spending a lot of my time just using all sorts of different analogies. But one of them that we talk about a lot, it's like in a startup, you're going, 90 miles per hour down the highway. And when something like this happens, if you're a restaurant or other small business or neighborhood business, you can close up shop or whatever you have to, and kind of, pull over the side of the road and wait out the storm. You can't do that with a lot of startups, because you can't just turn it back on again. Yeah. It's really complicated, and you don't have the runway to do that. So.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, I think contingency planning, it sounds like navigating through different funding mechanisms to help people through, lots of contingency planning you guys are doing. Sounds like a lot. And it's part of why I wanted to highlight this, is where we want to make people aware that this is a great time to lean in and spend the time talking to a CFO, like our team who's been doing this for a long time, and at least kind of, yes, some of these things are kind of generalized, like, hey, we think the PPP loan is probably going to be good for almost everybody, but everybody's going to have a unique situation. To your point, Janet, some are startups, and they're going to have to keep that momentum somehow. Others can maybe sit it out for a little while. And so I think we're really encouraging people, just get reach out to us and we'll jump on and spend a little time talking about where you are at as a business for these folks. Matthew, any last thoughts here before we kind of rate our beers?
Well, the question I always get, like, people jump straight to headcount reductions, in times like this. So the advice that we put out on our blog and we've been giving folks is, first think of your employees and ask what they want. Just don't forget your employees' lives have changed. A lot of them are taking care of parents or aging relatives. A lot of them are taking care of their kids. Some of them might want reduced schedules, so do that first. Second, before you fire people, think about a tiered salary reduction. Bringing people over 100 grand down on a higher level than you do if you're trying to get 20% reduction across the board. Bring the higher people down 40%, bringing the lower people down on the lesser extent, and then make the reductions your last kind of option. So that's the big thing we've been talking through with people, is just because of the four of us, we've all been through cycles, several, Graham maybe one or two more than me, but cycles, but so we've been through at least two of these major cycles, so we've seen some of this before. So hopefully that can help some of those people with those experiences.
Yeah. I will say one thing before we jump in over to rating our beers. I guess none of you guys noticed, because it's hard to notice, but see, we talked on the CFO call this week about, the facial hair competition, I guess, amongst us guys who are on there. I know. I got a little head start on you, Graham. I mean, I asked you to spot me a couple of weeks.
You had a couple of weeks, right?
Well, see, I'm not the lead, but not for long. So mentioned. All right, so we'll show you guys our little
beer rating system.
Our little app called Untapped here. And this is, I will say, it's very fancy how we do kind of our rankings here. So let's go, so I can spell it.
The Yuengling, we'll start with the Yuengling full leaded first.
The full leaded
Yuengling full, that'd be mine.
I'm just like, hold on, give it a second here, the interwebs to get there. I think it's this traditional lager is what you're drinking, right, Graham?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so you get to rate this thing on a scale of 1 all the way up to 5. What do you feel like giving it?
I'm going to give it a 4.25.
4.25. Graham likes it. Even though he's not a beer drinker, Graham likes it.
I do.
Okay. Maybe we'll get you to be a beer drinker after all at some point. I don't know.
It might be a little step too far.
Janet, what are your thoughts on the Yuengling Light? I know, and thank you, by the way, for letting us tap into y'all's emergency reserves there.
Well, you know what? It did its job. What you see is what you get. It was what I was expecting. Yeah. And it served its purpose as an emergency supply. So I'll give it a 4.
A 4. Okay.
Nice.
Yeah. Matthew, let's go with your Sweetwater Blue. You can probably think faster than I can type.
I'm gonna go with the 375. It's a solid beer.
375. He's the one guy drinking the fruit beer. Knows this label. No, Matthew.
Yeah, they're the fruity beers.
375. You said.
Yep.
And I'll give the Dales, which is. This is going to be in the 4s here somewhere.
Yeah, this is going to be a highly rated one for you, I know.
Yeah, this is up there. This is
Colorado.
Yeah, 6.5 ABV. Okay, it's a good start. Yeah, I'm gonna go 4.25 as well. That's a good one. Well, we appreciate you guys not just jumping on, but certainly all of the work you're doing serving so many clients of ours. We'll maybe have you guys back on and talk about some more, because I think over the next few weeks, if not months, you guys are going to be fielding lots of interesting questions from clients and other small businesses out there. We appreciate what you're doing. But catch us. We're going to up the cadence here. Matthew and I have a few other kind of tricks in store for some other videos we may be putting out as soon as later this week. So thanks. I know, be on the lookout. Thanks everybody for jumping on, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.